Sometimes we're under deadline and we're lacking what we needed, and there is a Lego store not far from here. Right behind you, there are more Lego than any grown man should have. I think everything's more accessible.
Yeah.
Like your tried and true basic filmmaker equipment that we used to have to make is now accessible.
Hey, so if you started making film sometime in the past 30 years, you probably remember this.
Assemble the camera onto the rig itself?
Or this.
We just screwed our tripod right into the wood.
Or maybe even this.
Play around with it and make sure your weight is correct. If it's not, you may need to drill another hole.
And if so, you also remember a time when it wasn't that easy to get the tools that you needed to use with your camera, which, let's be real, at the time was probably a Canon 5D, a 70, or the Rebel T2i. Welcome 2008. We are back. And if so, you definitely remember this guy.
I've got to go back to my soul-crushing office job, and you've got movies to make.
The crazy guy, insane guy that made it all possible. And he would do it all using a normal trip to the hardware store to make a lot of the gear that professionals were using. Nowadays, gear's cheap. Like, scary cheap. And if you don't know already, it's probably easier to buy a lot of gear than it is to make it. Like, you'll save time and money by buying it. So, from a guy that made it all, the original DIY dolly, the DIY shoulder rig, and literally so much more, is DIY filmmaking still relevant? And if so, what are the tools and DIY builds that every filmmaker needs to know about? Now, a portion of this video is sponsored by Storyblocks. If you want to know more about their awesome library of stock footage or audio, or just want to learn how to help out the channel, make sure you click the storyblocks.com/Indy Mogul link in the description down below. Alrighty guys, it is officially happening. We're going to go see Erik Beck, the man. We're going to his workshop. This is actually my first time going to his workshop, so we'll see how this goes in a minute.
Hey, welcome to my workshop.
It's good to see you. How you doing?
Good. Come on in.
Now, since hosting the channel, Erik has gone on to make all kinds of commercials and content for brands like Sci-Fi, Lego, and insert big blank here because he's also working on a top secret, super awesome building project that we can't talk about right now. All of this is just to say I'm really excited for him, and I was just excited to hear how he's been doing. Now, this is just a small portion of our interview with Erik Beck, but if you want to know more about the man, the myth, the legend, make sure you check out the Indy Mogul podcast in the description link down below. We're here in Erik Beck's studio. It looks like a 10-year-old's dream workshop.
Yeah.
Where have you been? What you been working on?
Yeah, a bunch of fun stuff. So after kind of doing Indy Mogul full time, we've been mostly still making cool content, but like for brands.
Yeah.
So most of our kind of commercial branded work is done through an ad agency called Tongle. Through Tongle, we've made things for Lego, Wired Magazine, Sci-Fi Channel. That freelance life, man.
Freelance life.
It's good till it's not.
Yeah. Oh, no, too real. Too real. Okay, well, here's my question then. So before it used to be like you go to the hardware store and it's like, get that galvanized steel, get that wood block, buy that drill, make that Steadicam.
Sure.
What are the things now maybe at the hardware store that every filmmaker needs to pick up if they haven't already?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's kind of a basic filmmaker toolkit.
Number one, regular old hardware tools. Now, before we even start to talk about where DIY filmmaking is relevant, let's go ahead and start with the basics. If you haven't gone to the hardware store as a filmmaker, put your filmmaker hat, go to Home Depot, and make sure you pick up the essentials. Here are the first things you're going to need if you're making films, period. 1, a good set of Allen keys. 2, an adjustable wrench. And 3, some kind of interchangeable screwdriver, ideally one with interchangeable bits. Now, this will basically get you out of like 90% of DIY builds, of camera builds, of hacks, or basically any problem that you might run into on set. And a good set of these is going to last you a lifetime. So in this case, I think it's worth to invest in the best stuff that you can get.
I use these almost every day. And as a person that's had a bunch of really crappy ones, once you go Bondhus, you don't go
Wrongdus. Now here's the thing. All that stuff is super heavy and super not portable. So I had to ask, from a guy that's been on a bunch of film sets, from a guy that's done a bunch of DIY builds, what is his everyday carry?
I got this guy right here. It's a Leatherman Skelly tool.
Why do you recommend this one in particular?
I really like this one because it's small and it only does a couple things really well. Pliers, the knife, bottle opener, that
Yep.
part I really like. A little screwdriver.
That can be
bit.
pulled out for a Phillips.
And then I guess the other thing I think of is like what I keep in my car.
Yeah.
So I almost keep a moving blanket in my car, some gaff tape.
Number 2, your regular old production tools. Yes, even though there are plenty of fancy companies making the production version of just about everything you can think of, even this weird thing, generally speaking, the hardware superstore will still beat out most production facilities when you actually need ordinary things when you're on location. We're talking about things like tables, chairs, ratchet straps, furniture dollies, but we're also talking about tools that you're going to be using for your lighting. So things like grip clips, your clamps, your extension cables, and your hand dimmers. All things that real production sets already use, because guess what? Sometimes you don't need to charge 4 times the cost of an ordinary table for a film table when a regular old table will do the job. Point dismissed. Erik showed me these tiny little work counters that he's been using, and honestly, I'm totally in love with them. They're small enough to be able to pack into a normal sedan car trunk without needing to put the seats down, and
I think they're like $30 or something. I mean, I've got 3 of them. Super light.
yeah.
Or I'm super strong. Classic Fernie pad. If your actors are doing something on the ground, you can use it as a courtesy. You can use it as like a flag and a pinch.
We use it for sound a lot of the time too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it kind of
So
blocks out that echo.
There's actually a bunch of furniture pads on the ceiling that are specifically for sound.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. I thought you were hiding dead bodies up there.
Yeah. Put these to help with the echo.
Yeah, no, just putting them to hide the echo.
Just helping the echo.
Just helping echo.
Help the echo. Oh, this is a big one for film sets. Headlamps.
Yes, yeah. Speaking of lighting, let's talk a little bit about DIY lighting. Number 3, DIY lighting. Now, despite what many of you guys might think, I actually love DIY lighting. In fact, I think it's one of the only areas where DIY filmmaking is alive and well.
I think there's some really cool DIY options in the LED realm. I think LEDs were not something that were around in the early Indy Mogul days.
Now, how does DIY lighting get used the most? Generally speaking, we use DIY lighting in narrow spaces where traditional fixtures don't work. So this right here is an example of some of the DIY lights that Erik's been working on. What are these right here?
These are just LED strip lights from Amazon. I got these special because they have really high CRI. And then there's a couple inches, and then this is shower curtain.
Gotcha.
And it's on this DIY dimmer.
How much did it cost to make these lights above the actual?
I could probably make 2 of these out of a $30 roll of LED.
That's amazing.
But the other DIY element of lighting, which I really love, is how to shape it.
Now, as far as DIY diffusion goes, this is also an area where it is just as relevant as ever. And yes, while there are plenty of expensive bounce boards and flags and DIY stuff that companies have, made, hardware materials like normal foam core are still being used to bounce or remove light on the big sets. And beadboard is still the standard for creating bounce lighting. So yes, you can make this stuff out of a normal hardware store trip.
I use a lot of shower curtain as diffusion in here. So a lot of this sort of lighting is high CRI LEDs and shower curtain.
I've also seen plenty of other people loading LED strips into the inside of softboxes and octobanks to achieve soft lighting while making the whole package a little bit thinner. Now it's less modular, of course, but it's still absolutely an awesome thing to see. Lastly, I feel like I'd be missing something if I didn't mention the obvious DIY lighting answer, and that is China balls. We're sitting in a studio right now that's also lit by a ton of China balls.
Yes, I love China balls.
They're amazing. Well, one thing about China balls that I love too is that, again, we're talking about things that haven't moved on or haven't been outplaced. China balls, can't beat it. Still used on so many film sets. And when it comes to producing cheap, soft light, this, plus like a household dimmer, is about as cheap and good as it gets. You don't need any builder experience here. You just hang it up, use it the same way that you would use any other softbox or volume light, and just make sure to watch the spill. What about 3D printers?
Ooh.
Number 4, we're about to get weird. Are you ready to get weird? Let's do this, but first, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Storyblocks. They have an absolutely awesome stock footage and audio library that we've been using to make all of our videos. In fact, just in case you missed it, in our last episode, we sat down with Darius Britt from D for Darius. We did an entire episode on how to practice filmmaking and how to make microfilms. And then we went ahead to see if we could actually make a microfilm using just Storyblocks stock footage, and yes, it is absolutely possible. They've got a ridiculously deep library of cinematic footage that can be colored or edited for whatever inserts and landscapes that you want to use them for. In fact, we probably use just a little bit of their aerial footage in like 90% of our episodes just to show each of the cities that we visit. So if you're interested in checking them out or actually just helping out to support the channel, make sure you head on over to the Storyblocks/Indy Mogul link in the description down below. But otherwise, let's get weird. 3D printing.
You can 3D print some really cool stuff for filmmakers. And there are a lot of free models online. I've 3D printed a lot of parts for my filmmaking things, but it is like a new hobby. First of all, we have to invest in the machine, which have gotten way cheaper, but you know, you're still gonna spend a couple $100 minimum.
Now, what about filmmaking gear though? Can't 3D printing help out there as well? And the answer is yes, maybe, kind of.
If you are passionate about that and you wanna do it, it can be an awesome tool for filmmaking. There's plans online that you can get for free for full shoulder rigs and everything.
Yeah.
Where you even print the rods and everything. But I guarantee you it's gonna take you like a week or two to print it, and then you're gonna have to sand it and put it together, and then it's probably gonna be really creaky and like, you know.
When you could just go to Small Rig and buy some
Absolutely.
super cheap shoulder rig.
If you're not interested in learning how to 3D print, you should probably just buy stuff.
Now the short answer is yes, it is okay in anything that you are okay with being plastic, and anything that you're fairly certain somebody else has designed to be 3D printed already and designed to be made well. Which means for a lot of filmmakers, there actually isn't that much.
So you're saying plates and stuff like that, not a good idea to 3D print?
It can't replace metal part, like load-bearing metal parts.
Yeah, you don't want to 3D print a tripod. That's just not a good idea.
And then I also, you know, have designed and 3D printed a lot of custom brackets for my motion control robots or things like that. Or I've got a tripod plate that needs to attach to some weird proprietary like robot part.
The only common thing that Eric and I could come up with that's actually helpful for filmmakers to 3D print are things like this plastic follow focus adapter that can cost anywhere from $5 to $30 a piece if you wanted to buy them normally, and they cost less than $0.25 to print. However, if you are really into building stuff and you're really willing to step it up a notch, then 3D printing opens up an entirely new world of DIY filmmaking, and that is where things get really interesting. You're also able to design and create tools that don't already exist. Things like this rig here that Eric created that allows you to use a GoPro on your Osmo Mobile, or if you want to get really crazy, things like this. This is Eric's DIY motion control device. And yes, it totally works. It operates a lot like a bolt that costs about $250,000, but it was made for under $3,000. And holy hell, is that amazing.
Basically how it works is we've got the control box up here. That all runs through these complicated cables to this crappy PC. But the coolest part is it connects to this.
Wait, hold on.
360
You're telling me that this actually goes off of a standard Xbox controller?
Yep.
A bunch of high-tech stuff that I don't understand.
This is the software. So we've got pan, tilt, and up and down. So it's mostly off-the-shelf parts that I kind of put together in a unique way. So most of this is from Servo City. Electronic focus is 3D printed. Some of the adapters are 3D printed. For the Z-axis are drawer slides.
Yeah.
That's being pulled up by like a super powerful motor.
So, is DIY filmmaking dead? Well, I think it's actually better if you hear it from the king himself.
The super specialized high-tech stuff, which you couldn't afford and probably couldn't make.
Yeah.
Now you can actually make it if you're crazy like me.
Yay, crazy people.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's better for everyone. You know,
Yeah.
like everything's more accessible with the technology and the knowledge. Because I couldn't have built this if I didn't find the 10 other crazy nerds who are building things like this online.
That's right. While we might not all still be shooting on the poor man's Steadicam or using Home Depot work lights, DIY filmmaking is still alive and well. In fact, it's better than ever because we no longer need to make every single piece of gear. There are now plenty of companies out there making film gear for cheap and for indie creators, and because of that, what that means is that DIY filmmaking now is more about specializing or creating gear that is capable of the higher end functions that are really expensive otherwise. Bye. See you later, man. So there you have it. There is your episode with the one and only Erik Beck. If you like this episode, make sure you tune into the podcast with Erik, where we actually dive into the nitty-gritty of DIY filmmaking and what Erik has been working on. Also, get ready for Erik's new show, where he's going to do a technical deep dive into both the history and the gear that all filmmakers should know about. I'm Ted, and this is Indy Mogul. If you like this episode, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment for us to answer in the next episode, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Erik, real question.
Yeah.
What is all this blood doing on the wall? There's literally blood
Oh, yeah. All over.
everywhere. Is that a dead body up there?
No. Whatever. I gotta go.